I was going towards the light that everybody talks about. It was just so beautiful. And just drawn into that light. Then all of a sudden there was like sparks of different color lights, colors that I've never seen. And they were like little darts of light that were coming into my being and through me. And it was just like an explosion and downloads. Each piece of light that was coming into me was a download of information, of knowing, of understanding. There is no judgment, and there's just love and embrace. And so I asked my grandfather, I said, well, I would like to know, have you met Jesus? Because I've heard a lot of stories about him. I'd like to know the real deal, that what's the, the stories are true, or if, I'd like to know the real story of him. As soon as I said that, I was looking into the eyes of Jesus, and it was a love that is indescribable.
This is Beyond with Heather Tesch, where we examine near-death experiences and life itself, hopefully making this life a little better. Hello, everybody. Welcome, and thank you so much for joining me and my wonderful guest. Hello to you, Tammy Lee Anderson.
Hello, Heather. Thank you for inviting me as your guest.
Oh, I was so looking forward to talking to you. You just have such a gentle spirit, and I've heard your story, and it's just so beautiful. You had 3 near-death experiences. Now, one was you died when you were born. Another, you were 6 months old. And then you had one at 23.
Yes.
And the one at 23 was just amazing. But Let's talk about the first 2. And I believe that you recalled those when you were 17 years old and you were sitting in a church.
Yes, I was. I've always been attracted to the silence since I was a kid, a child, and I just found peace in the quiet. And so there was a church near my home, and I would just often go there and sit in the back when nobody was there. I liked the smell of incense, and I liked the candles burning, and it just was peaceful there. And I liked it best when nobody was there. But this day, there was a priest there. He was dusting and cleaning, and he had seen me there before, and he came and asked me, he said, what brings you here so often? And I couldn't really verbalize why, except I said, I'm not sure. I just enjoy the quiet. I find so much peace here. And he said, can I say a prayer for you? And I thought he would just say a few words and be off, but he laid his hands on my head, and I felt this warmth just fill my whole body. And it felt like, I can only describe it, felt like honey, slow, just warmth. And then it settled in my like solar plexus area. And then it was just like an explosion of memory, remembering and re-experiencing. It was like I was re-experiencing, at that moment, there was a lot of emotion connected to my mother. I was connected to the emotion of her fear, because she went into labor 2 months so I was 2 months premature. And also shame, because they had gotten married fast, so that the secret wouldn't be broken. So I felt that, and I was never told this. So these memories I shared with my mom after this experience, and she was just in tears from what I shared, and she'd carried a lot all her life. But so what I experienced was the emotions of her, my grandparents, my dad, and all the doctors and nurses. I was born, stillborn. So I wasn't breathing. I was flat as a pancake. The birth was 38 hours for Mom. And I was stuck in the birth canal for way too long, and it had flattened my body. The head was flat, and the cord was wrapped around my neck. So I was blue and flat when I came out, and they said, I'm sorry she didn't make it. And then they took me into another room and they got me going. So here I am. But I felt all the emotion of everyone around, the angst of the doctors and nurses working, trying to get this baby to breathe. And I was also, what I experienced was the light, being held in that incredible love. It felt like home. It was just all enveloping embrace. And just being held in the light. And then I was brought back, and it was shocking, terrifying. I was put in immediately, they didn't, in those days, that was the 60s, so they didn't have a prenatal care, and it was in a small hospital, but they happened to have one little incubator, and so they put me in that. It was like a little bubble, and I was there for 2 months. But what I remember from just the peace and being held and safe, and it was very familiar. It was like home. So a few months later, I had the second near-death experience, and I remembered this at the same time as when I was going through this re-experiencing with this prayer. And I had to have a surgery. The fontanelles had closed. Those are the soft spots on the baby's head. They had closed, so my head couldn't grow. So either I was going to die or wouldn't be functional because the head couldn't grow. So the surgery was needed. And luckily there was 2 surgeons doing this brand new procedure at this small hospital. They were doing a tour, and they asked them if they would do it. And so they did the surgery. And, but the problem then was, the anesthesiologist used too much, anesthesia, and I escaped out of my body again, and I left again. And so they couldn't complete the surgery then. And they had to bring my heart back. And so they had to shock it back with adrenaline. And even at the time, the doctor said, I don't know why this kid's alive, because there has to be more to it, because she just has a will to live. Well, I know it's different. I know that I was the light. I was brought back by those in the light. And I just remember in that instance, I remember just being held in the light again. But I remember light beings surrounding me. I remember just being the contrast between coming back, the peace of that light. It's so bright and all invasive. It feels like you're blending with the essence of that light. And then to be brought back is such a jolt. The contrast between the lights of the surgery room, the smells, it was just incredible. And when they actually did the surgery a few months later, I had a similar experience, but it felt like I was in between. I didn't actually die, but I was in between. I felt the presence of the light. I felt being held in that light, but I also felt the absolute terror, shivering beyond anything I can describe. My whole body was shivering. It was super cold in that operating room, and I was being held down. And I know my experience was they didn't use hardly any anesthesia when they actually did the surgery, because I don't know if they were afraid to lose me or what, but I had the experience of being in between, and I was going back and forth. So I felt like sometimes I was out of my body, sometimes I was in. When I was in, it was not a good experience at all. So having that contrast was quite interesting. I mean, when I look at it now, when I was in that experience, it was not interesting. It was terrifying to keep coming back into that little body. And I didn't want to be back in it. And so that really shaped the direction of my life. before this experience, I know that it had shaped me with unknowing. I didn't know why I had certain abilities like precognitive abilities, incredibly sensitive, oversensitive. I could feel emotions of people, ups and downs, and I was aware. Interesting, I was aware of when people were going to pass. And it was not, I didn't feel it was very inconvenient or helpful to know that, because there's nothing I can do. But I knew that before and as a child. And that's still today. I have, and don't anybody ask me to tell them, because I won't. It's none of my business to tell somebody if this time is coming. But I knew, with my brother before he passed, I knew, several family members and friends. And I can even walk, by somebody in a grocery store, or I can feel their time is ending, that they're going, and it's like they're glowing, and they have light. And at that same church, there was the priest there that prayed for me. He had a gift of healing. And so we became friends, and he would pray for people, and they would come to him often. Well, one day I was there in the church, and I don't know, we were going to talk or something. And he had an appointment before. He didn't tell me who he was going to see, but I decided to connect with whoever and join my prayer with his. And so I just was praying for the person that he was praying for. I didn't know who. And this little girl appeared to me, and she told me her name was Cassie. And she was about 10 or 11 years old. And she was very peaceful, and she was very bright. She was full of light. And I knew that she was going to be passing soon. And I didn't tell him. I told my sister. I didn't tell the priest because I thought he'd think I was really nuts. But I told my sister. I tell her everything. And I said, we need to look at the paper because she's going to be going soon. And so we kept an eye, and sure enough, it was only about 3 days, and we saw the newspaper, and there was Cassie. She was, I believe, 10 years old, and her name was Catherine, and Cassie was a nickname. And she passed from cancer at a very young age. So, so those experiences shaped my life from a young age. But after I had this remembering and re-experiencing when I was 17, it really shaped the direction. And I have to say, I know today, many near-death experiencers have depression after their experiences, and people often say, "Well, that's odd," but it can be a part of it. And I suffered from childhood depression up until I was 23 years old, and I can share what changed in that experience, because that was quite life-changing too. It wasn't a near-death experience, but in a way, it kind of near it, but it wasn't. So I just want to say that those two experiences shaped my life, and that remembering took me in a direction of trying to find that again, trying to be home again. And for me at that time, I was looking for it in community. So I spent over 13 years in religious communities, and thinking that the religious life was going to be part of, the direction I would go. I just wanted to be back in that love. And I didn't realize that love I was seeking for was always within me. And so that's why I'm sharing this today, is because I want people to know that it's really not outside of us. It's within us. And maybe it'll save people from seeking years like I did, because eventually I found that what I was seeking was truly within. And it's that present, that awareness, that light that is within all of us. And you don't have to have a near-death experience to find that peace. I did eventually find that peace, knowing that that home is within me. I don't have to die again to experience that. But I have to say it took me many years to integrate this experience. Some people say that their near-death experiences changed them a lot. For me, it's been a lifetime of integration, a lifetime of unfolding and realizing that I am what I was seeking. I am that. I am the awareness, and so is everyone else. We are all the light. And so breathing into that every day, breathing into the light, breathing into peace. And so the next near-death experience happened at age 23. I was attracted to nature and silence, and I was very inspired by, the saints, and I'm no saint, I can tell you that. But I was inspired by the mystics and the saints and their lifestyle, and their one focused. My nature is very, like when I get focused, that's the direction I'm going. I mean, I've 5-time national championship team in flatwater kayaking. I made the Olympic trials in 1980, 5th degree black belt, 2 master's degrees, not just one. So when I focus, I'm very aware that what we focus on is what we manifest and create in our lives. And so I don't even allow like a negative thought to come into my, if it goes through, I just immediately release it. And it's like going down a river. I don't hold it in my awareness. I kind of tell people it's like, I decide who sits at my table very consciously. And so all this possibilities of what goes through our awareness, positive thoughts, negative thoughts, judgments, self-judgment, judgment of others, non-forgiveness of others, non-forgiveness of ourselves. We decide. And so it's a practice. For me, meditation at this point in my life, I sat many years in meditation and many years on pillows. And for me, meditation at this point is every moment of my day. I'm aware of what goes through the field of my consciousness and what I attach my focus to. And that creates my experience. So, we're more powerful than we can even imagine, just by putting our attention there. And so be mindful of who sits at your table, within. So the third near-death experience was I was hiking in the mountains. I was fasting for over a week, and it was very hot. And I basically had a heat stroke. I collapsed, and I went out of my body. And in this experience, I felt like I was in a river. I was going towards the light that everybody talks about. It was just so beautiful. And just drawn into that light. And it just feels like it's so, there's no words for this. And I attempt to put words to it. I even tried to paint it one time, but it's like you can't even do that. But I'll get as close as I can. I felt like I was in a river of souls. And it was interesting because it was like infinite number of souls were moving towards this light. And every soul was a different colors I'd never seen before. And I can only at this time think that it was because there were different vibrational experiences that people were coming from, and they were vibrating at different frequencies. But it was like a rainbow You know, when you see the fractal coming through a crystal and all those colors were there going towards the light. And then all of a sudden I noticed a presence in front of me, and it was the back of my grandfather. And I said, Papa. And he turned around. I loved my grandfather. And he turned around, and it was just like this, more than telepathic. It was this blending. It was just nothing unknown. And it was soul to soul. And it was just so loving. And I find our words so lacking, and we can have so many misunderstandings because of we're using words. It's very primitive, the words. I know that our true communication is soul to soul communication. And it's more than telepathic. It's a heart to heart communication. It's a soul to soul. And all the misunderstandings aren't possible, you know, and there is no judgment, and there's just love and embrace. And so I asked my grandfather, I said, well, I would like to know, have you met Jesus? Because I've heard a lot of stories about him. I'd like to know the real deal, that what's the, you know, if the stories are true, or if, you know, I'd like to know the real story of him. As soon as I said that, I was looking into the eyes of Jesus, and it was a love that is indescribable. I felt drawn into, and I have to say, people say, well, what did he look like? And I can't tell you, because it was an energetic, experience of him. It was like I was looking into his eyes, but I can't tell you in words what that looked like. Because it was just, there's no words to this. And it was just complete love and beauty. And I was just drawn into his love. And it was like I was being drawn into that light even deeper. And all of a sudden, this beautiful being took a hold of me and took me to the side. Because I was just going into that love that I was experiencing. And then I just started asking this being, and I'll just say she, because there was a softness, but I do believe at this point that beautiful being was me, my soul. And just incredibly a beautiful soul. And she brought me to the side, and I was asking questions like as fast as I could, you know, and I didn't know I had that many questions. I knew I had a lot, but not that many. And I was using my words, and then I realized as I was using my words, the answer would come immediately, and that was a form of telepathic feeling. And I was just asking questions, and it was like this understanding, and it just was coming into my being. And I'm pointing here because it felt like it was coming in, not here. It was coming into me. And then all of a sudden, the questions got bigger and faster. And then all of a sudden, there was like sparks of different color lights, colors that I've never seen. And they were like little darts of light that were coming into my being and through me. And it was just like an explosion and downloads. Each piece of light that was coming into me was a download of information, of knowing, of understanding. And the questions, you know, why people suffer, why do babies die? Much injustice in this world. Why? And I realized that everything is perfect. Believe it or not, everything is perfect, as hard as this life can be. But that's from a perspective of a soul. It's not per point of view of the human experience. Because I want to say injustice is not okay, you know, in a human point of view. But from the bigger picture, we experience the contrast here in this life to give us the opportunity to choose love. And we don't always do that. Sometimes we choose anger. Sometimes we choose to, injure someone. And these are opportunities to make different choices again and again and again. We choose all the time. Am I going to sit with this unforgiveness for myself or others, or judgment? So this contrast, and sometimes we don't choose the light or love, which is us. That's the essence of who we are. We are the light. But we're here and we experience the contrast, the pain, the suffering often. And that allows us a depth in our ability to love others that wouldn't be otherwise possible without this experience. We intentionally come here as souls to experience this. And that's hard for a lot of us to hear. Like, I would never wish this on myself. But in a sense, on one sense, yes, we've walked into this life to see, can I even love this? Can I even forgive this? And that's a question we're asked, each of us, every day, every moment. Can I forgive this? Can I love this in myself? And it's really true. As we learn to love ourselves, we're able to love others deeper. So many of people do healing. I've been doing healing for over 40 years. And it's interesting when people are doing healing that a lot of people are doing it with the hope that they'll be healed within themselves. So it's kind of like hoping that they'll receive some kind of healing. But true healing is when you're empty, and it has nothing to do with the outside. It has everything to do with the inside. It's the cup overflowing. And instead of receiving, the outside doesn't define who we are, and it can't heal who we are. A teacher can't heal who we are. A priest can't heal who we are. That has to come from the inside out. Love comes from the inside out. So it's that cup overflowing. And as we learn to love ourselves, then we're able to love others by allowing them many times just to be right where they're at. We have no need to change anything in anyone. Just be a presence of love and peace, that peace that we are. I did over 30 years of structural body work, and people would come in for healing, and structural integration body work. And I really do at this time. People often say, my teacher would say, you should teach this now. And I often thought, it's not really a technique, and it's not a procedure. It's who you are. And how do you teach that? So I'm attempting to say that it's who you are that brings healing into the world. And if everybody worked on the woundedness of generations, a lot of times the woundedness that we have within is we're carrying it from many generations. We've, popped into a lineage, a story, and here we are. And our practice, our challenge is to transform it with our soul's light. And we might shift that vibration of that family lineage or our soul's lineage. We might shift it just a little bit, but we were here to bring light and to shift the vibration into a more expansive, spacious state, and bring the peace, bring the vibration of love that we are. So what brought me back out of this experience, and you can ask questions if I didn't get enough detail there, but what brought me back into this, nobody asked me if I wanted to come back into a body. I was brought back by the sound of a horse, and found out later this horse was over the next hill. So it was far away from me. I don't know how, but I felt the steam of his mouth next to my ear, and this in my ear. So the sound of the horse brought me back into my body, and I have to say it was the most yucky, terrible feeling ever. And I thought I would never want to do that again because it was so painful coming from an expanded state of consciousness back into a constricted, refining. It was just horrible. And I laid there for hours, three or 4 hours. It was dark by the time I even started to move. Maybe I cooled down by then. I don't know. But it took me forever to start moving again. And so that was third near-death experience. I'll talk just a little bit, if you like, about that experience at 23 and what changed the depression. Because that was a pivotal time. I was incredibly depressed because my brother had just been killed in a car accident. And I was just beyond grief. And I knew that he was in the light. People say, well, how can you lose hope? And I didn't lose hope. I just felt finished. I felt overwhelmed. I felt just incredibly sad that, there was nothing I could do, even though I saw it months before. Every time he'd turn around and walk away, I'd see his back, and it was like somebody was punching me in the gut. And I told my mom, I feel like he's going away. And the day that he died, the phone rang, and I looked at my mom. I said, Ron's dead. And just don't say that before, somebody comes in and delivers the message. But it just popped out. I knew he was gone. And he's not gone, but he's not in our physical form vibration anymore. He's still with us. And there is really, truly no death. But in a sense, we're dying and being born every moment here. We're being born, where change is part of the design. And we're always growing and changing and dying and being reborn again. All the cells in our body aren't the cells that they were yesterday. We have cells in our body being born every day, dying each day. This body is not the same as the body that I had when I was an Olympic, level athlete, or a baby, Our body is not the same as it was yesterday. Our awareness is not the same as it was yesterday. So everything is fluid. And so what happened was I was in this depression, and part of it was a pattern of depression that I had since I was a kid. And I was on the floor of my dorm room at the university, and I had a bottle of pills, and I was ready to leave. And always I've had this sense of spirit world around me, love around me, guides. And I heard my guide, or, love, I just call it love, say, I love you. And I said, leave me alone. I was done. And I said, just leave me alone. And at that moment, I went into this complete stillness. It was dark, it was still, and it was like being in a space of pre-creation. There was no thing. And it was still, and I was aware of just breathing. And there was nothing else. And immediately I thought, I want to be a part of creation. I want to be a part of manifesting love in the world. That stillness was beautiful, but there was nothing. And the nature of my being is creation, creative. And so I immediately said, this is not what I want. I want to be back. And when I returned to my body instantly, I was asked by Spirit, will you stay for love? And how can you not answer yes to that question? So, and I want to, what I've noticed is many people listening to these near-death programs, I want to say this to those who are listening to it, wanting to leave this world. Because there are those, they've contacted me, and I want to say, ask you that question that was asked of me. Will you stay for love? That's the only reason to be here, is to stay for love. When you deeply ask yourself that question, there is no other response than yes. If we realize what we're here for, to manifest love, to expand love, to just be ourselves. You don't have to change anything about yourself. You don't have to fix anything about yourself. I learned this over a lifetime. I hope that makes sense to you. But there's nothing to change, nothing to fix. You're okay just the way you are. You're beautiful. Manifestation, reflection, image of God. You're a ray of the light of God, and be that. Unique in all the world. It would be a terrible shame if I had been successful at that attempt, because of all the things and the lives that have touched me and the lives that I've touched since that's been many years. I was 23, age 23, and I'm in my 60s now. And it would be a shame because so much has happened and evolved within myself and the connections with beautiful, amazing people. All the things that I've done in my life have kind of coalesced into the healing work that I do now and the mediumship. Never in the world thought I would be doing mediumship. But I work with, I just get to meet the most amazing souls that are going through some of the most painful events, to lose a loved one, to lose a child from suicide, or lose a child from, murder. I mean, I see it all. I hear it all and I feel it. And what I'm amazed, Heather, is the strength and just the amazing ability of the human being to rise out of their suffering into the light, because that's who we are. We're remembering who we truly are. And it's that, when you're cracked open, life just cracks you open and you're just like beyond. Some people are just, it's beyond pain. And it's just an unbelievable grief. And you're cracked open, and that's how the light gets through. It's that surrendering into that space in between the tears and standing up that I find, to me, that's the living resurrection of God, the living resurrection. We are the story that Jesus talked about, or he lived. We are living that as well. We have our death. We have our crucifixion. Many people do in their own lives, and then they rise again. And I see people again and again and again rise back up, stand back up in their power, which is the light, which is love. And I'm awed every day. Every day I'm awed by the courage, and it brings me emotion to me, the courage of people to stand up again and say, choose love again, and to realize who they really are. And sometimes this life offers us that opportunity. As terrible as it sounds, our pain offers us an opportunity to turn back into that awareness, remember deeply who we are. And where I find the most juice, the most opportunity, is where I find my resistance within myself. Where my no is. Can I turn my no into a yes? Can I turn my non-forgiveness into forgiveness? Some days it's no. Some days it's, okay, I can. So and there's nothing, we don't have to be perfect. We're perfect just as we are. And in the human experience, we forget that. So we can have this experience. If everything was perfect, the game would be up, and we wouldn't have this opportunity. There's a reason why we're here, and it's to experience the contrast, to expand our ability to love. I always thought I would never want to meet somebody that didn't come from some kind of dysfunction, in their family, or because they'd have this much compassion. They wouldn't know what, it felt like, our pain. And I imagine most people listening to this, if you think deeply, the things that have affected you the most have given you the most depth. You look back at these experiences, you wouldn't want to repeat it and you wouldn't want to go through it again, but it's made you into who you are. And you've stood back up again and you've claimed the power of love. It's all about love. That's who we are. And so that was I guess you could call it a spiritually transformative experience. They put names on these things. Near death doesn't come close to near death explaining what it's about, because it's not near, and there's no death about it. It's near life, maybe, or near the light. There's no name. It's nameless what this experience is, but it has nothing to do with death. But I've had many spiritually transformative experiences throughout my life, and again and again and again. But that was a key one at 23. I spent many years after that in religious communities, and then one day I was with a Franciscan community, and we were working, doing soup kitchen work. And I could tell you a nice story about that one. We had just served over 400 meals at St. Ben's Kitchen in Milwaukee. And I was wiping down the table, and there were 400 meals to the homeless. And there was this one man sitting at the table, and he hadn't finished yet, and he was eating slowly. And I was just wiping the table around him. And I'll never forget the feeling. It's such a beautiful experience. But I looked into his eyes. We met eyes. And his eyes were incredibly clear and beautiful. And I realized as I was looking into his eyes, there was no server and there was no served. There was only one. It was like looking into a mirror. There was no one being served and there was no server. There was just one. So, yeah.
Beautiful.
Think about that one for a second, because it was I'll never forget that experience. And so these beautiful experiences have shifted my life into a direction where I just continually unfold and integrate what I experienced in the near-death experiences. I feel like this is the last part of my life right now. And I live in amazing peace. And it's for me, it's a time of being in that space, because it's taken a lifetime to unfold into this space of peace. People often say, "Oh, you feel so peaceful," and it's true. It's where I live, but hasn't come magically. It's come through a lot of ups and downs, a lot of experiences, a lot of turning back and getting back up, and it takes courage to be in human form. But I actually, I love being here. I love having the opportunity to continually to expand my awareness of love and the depths of love, and choose that again and again and again. Return to my own unfolding. So, if you have any questions so far, because I feel like I'm just talking and talking.
I have lots of questions.
Oh, good.
Your experiences are incredible and beautiful. And yet, when you look at it too, there's so much wisdom in just your entire story and what you were able to bring back and what you learned.
Yeah.
It really is special. And I was very intrigued because you, in your third near-death experience, you came face to face with Jesus.
Yeah.
And the reason you came face to face with him was because you were asking your grandfather, what's the real deal with Jesus? Because you had heard all these stories, but you really wanted to know the truth.
Right.
Did you discover that truth? And if so, what did you find out?
He didn't come to start a religion. He said, walk side by side with me. And he didn't say, imitate my life. He all the things that I've shared so far are what I understood is you are the light. You'll do greater things than I will. And you'll go through your own experiences of death and resurrection. He was showing us, kind of how it's done, like how you live authentic life. He lived an authentic life in complete vibrational integrity he knew who he was. He said, I am. We are the light. And but he was not, the thing about when you look at teachers, beautiful teachers, and he was a beautiful teacher, because he walked the walk. And I would never trust a teacher that didn't walk the walk, And, but he was pointing in a direction. And a lot of people, there's a saying in Zen, and Bruce Lee said it, don't look at the finger that's pointing to the moon. When the teacher points to the moon, don't look at the finger. He's pointing to the moon. And that's what happens with a lot of people. They look at the finger. They look at the teacher. They look at, trying to find a savior. And so what I understood is he was pointing in the direction, which means he's pointing. He said, the kingdom of God is within you. The light is within you. You are that. You are I am. You're an aspect of the light. You are a aspect of God. And so that's what Anderson, and I don't want to insult any people that are walking the path of Christian. My brother's a very conservative Christian. I wouldn't want to change anything about his walk. And all the paths lead back to love. Even the paths that don't embrace, people say, well, what about Hitler and all these evil people? Do they, they're part of the light too. And they're part of the contrast. Believe it or not, we are all an aspect of light having this human being experience. Some forget more than others. They forget who they are and they're in the missiness. And I wouldn't want to be that deep in the forgetting, but eventually we all return to the light.
What you were saying about Jesus, were these things that you gathered and learned over your lifetime, or is that what you felt he was relaying to you?
That's what I felt from him, and I can say that it's been integrated over a lifetime. And I felt much more that can't even be put into words, and I can't. Only thing I can do is, it's a vibrational exchange, basically. When I'm in my peace, when I'm in that presence of that experience, then there's, a vibrational integrity that's created. And maybe somebody would feel that. Maybe you can hear it in the peace.
You do exude such peace about you. It's very comforting to be near you.
Yeah.
When you were asking this other soul that pulled you aside that you believe was your soul.
Yeah.
You asked a lot of questions about, why this? Why is there suffering?
Yeah.
And so on. Can you share more about some of the answers you got, some of the questions and answers that you got when you did this?
A lot of it I can't, because I can't put into words, but I think I've shared about the main theme was, why do the innocent suffer? And why, and I felt to the depth of me, the answer was that everything is perfect as it is, that our lives have a direction. People have asked, well, does that mean that there's no free will? I don't I didn't experience that. What I understood in that moment is that we, as creative beings of the light, we create like a framework, and then we get to come and experience. So yeah, I understood a lot, and a lot of it I've already talked about here with, especially around suffering and free will. To the extent that we're conscious, we have freedom, free will. To the extent that we're not conscious, I understood that we don't have free will. So to the extent that we're unconscious, we're living our program. We're living what's been told to us many generations. To the extent that we're asleep, we're living our program. We're on automatic. To the extent that we're awake, we're free. So does free will exist? I understood in that moment that to the extent that you are conscious. And so the practice is to become more and more unfolding that awakening within. I understood that clearly, so. But not instantly. I have to say, just because I got these downloads doesn't mean I could do it, It took a lifetime to integrate it. People often, I get the feeling sometimes people think, oh, you have, you're magical because you've had this experience. I can't say that it's made my life any easier. It's made my life more true. Another thing I was understanding clearly is that the reason why I'm here is to bring that love into the world. So I was very attracted to bring healing, and or bringing love. And I remember when I was 7 years old, I was just very conscious of how much harm we can be. I was walking across the grass of my front yard and realizing I step on the grass and a bug dies. Just a sensitive little kid. And I decided then, one, that I would devote my life to causing as little harm as possible. Yeah. And so that's an effect of that experience. I often hear that people that going through near-death experience, they change from being, getting all the houses and the cars, and then change their life into something healing. For me, that started from day one. I don't know a difference, but I want to say that was an orientation for me, the healing and bringing kindness and love. Doesn't mean I'm perfect at all, and I have all the foibles of everybody. I have a lot. And so it's been an unfolding. So all this, what I received, these downloads, it comes out in many ways in my life. And it comes out through, I do mentoring, and it comes out through that. Sometimes it just feels like a download. Healing and mediumship and mentoring, the best way I've found that happens is when you become nothing. And it just comes through you.
And that's so hard to do.
Yeah, to get yourself out of the way, get your ego out of the way, just become nothing. In mediumship, I am just awed by the information that comes through sometimes. I'm just blown away. Simple things that come through that you couldn't know otherwise. And the more I get myself out of the way, the more I don't try, don't do, just be, then it comes through. The same with healing. It's not the person that's doing the healing that's doing anything. It's when you stand back and you get out of the way and let it come through you, that light that emanates through all of us. Get out of the way. And the same with mentoring. So this information that was downloaded often comes through in a feeling of like download when people were talking. Just like now, I didn't practice anything. It's coming through. And the more you get yourself out of the way, I've found, the more I get myself out of the way, it just comes through. And that's that's the essence, the presence, the peace, the compassion.
That makes so much sense. It's really intriguing too that you talk about, everything is perfect, but on a soul level, there's no right or wrong, but then there is on a human level.
Yes. Yeah.
Right and wrong. And
Yeah.
that makes a lot of sense to help, I think, people understand more about why suffering is okay. It's experienced differently.
Yeah. And I'm definitely, as a martial artist, I've taught martial art 10 years at the university. I have a school of martial arts, Aikido. And I had the experience. I wrote about it in my book, and more detail if you want. But I had the experience of a life or death experience with being taken down a dirt road, basically kidnapped by a person. And it was a life or death choice. I guess since I started to tell it, I should probably tell it. But I was on my way. I was going to Taizé, France, so I didn't speak French. But I was taking a bus. The bus stopped 5 miles from where I needed to go. And so I just put my backpack on. I was in my 20s, and I just started walking towards Taizé. Well, I wasn't hitchhiking, but this guy pulled over on the side and offered me a ride. And I said, okay, I've got 5 miles to go that way. Thanks. So I threw my backpack in the car. We started going, and then he missed the turn. And I said, hey, it's that way. And he said, oh, it's faster this way. And about an hour later, it was getting dark, and he, by that time, he had no intention of taking me anywhere except where he wanted. And he turned down a dirt road, and he was getting seclusion. So we were going down this dirt road, and everything in my body started shaking, just the cartoons when the knees shake and the whole body was just shaking wildly. And I started praying, and I said to I often say it's my angels, but actually it was the mother of Jesus, because I figured she was a mother, and there's nothing more powerful than the love of a mother. And power, a mother and a child, you wouldn't want to get like a mama bear. So I was praying to her, and I said, if this starts, one of us will die here today. I will not be a victim. And as soon as I said that, peace entered me like no other. The shaking stopped. I got completely peaceful. And he turned the car off, gone behind trees, and I looked at him, and I was so calm, and everything was peaceful. And I looked at him, and I said, you start this car. You're going to take me to a nearby hotel, and in the morning, you're going to come back and get me, and you're going to take me where you should have taken me in the first place. And he started shaking, and the color went out of his face like he just lost his life, because he about did. And so the fear went into him. Now, I tell this story because I want people to understand that the most powerful person in the world is the one that has nothing to lose. In that moment, I realized that there was only one life left to lose in that car. I'd given my life up. I surrendered so completely that he had no power over me. I was already surrendered. And so the only life left to take was his. And I would have taken his life. And so that's the human aspect. And there was no anger in me. In fact, I felt compassion for the man I was about ready to kill. And a strange feeling to feel, but it was like walking down steps. It's the next indicated step, and this is how it's going to go, without any anger, and I would have killed him. And I had the capability. We're about the same size, though. And I had a lot more experience than him.
Did you get in the car with him the next day?
I did. So
that's incredible.
He took me to a hotel. Mm-hmm. We got in the car the next day. He took me to Taizé, and he looked at me as I got out of the car, and he said, be careful out there. It's a dangerous world. And I looked him in the eyes. I handed him a Franciscan cross, and I said, I'll see you again someday. Because I know I will. I'll see him in the spirit world, not this world. But we'll see each other again. And actually, some of the most challenging experiences of our life, he was a teacher on one level, not a human level. He was a creep on a human level. Yeah. But on another level, he's a teacher for me, because he taught me that the most powerful person is in the world is the one who surrenders their life. There's nothing to take. That's why you don't, the most dangerous person is the one who has nothing to lose. If I have nothing to lose, that's, governments don't want their people they want them to have something to lose, so they'll be afraid. Fear is a control mechanism. There was no fear. I had no fear because I let it go.
Wow.
And so it was an incredibly powerful moment. And I remember that lesson every day, when it comes to, if fear arises, I remember we have nothing to lose here, actually. We're not going to even lose our lives, because life continues. So we have nothing to lose. If we lived in a life of fearlessness, it would be a different world. So many of us are driven and live our lives out of fear-based responses, fear-based choices. I realized when I was about 17, I believe, I remember telling my dad, my poor dad, I said, I realized something. I could sit on that corner and never move and be okay. I could sit there the rest of my life. He goes, you're going to be a homeless person? And that's not what I meant. But what I understood is, you're okay just the way you are. There's nothing to lose.
And that means we're okay in our imperfections.
Absolutely. But it means there is no death. There is only love. Ultimately, no one can take a life that... How can you take my life? It doesn't... I am alive always. This image you see before you is not really here. In a sense, it's here on a human level, but this is, it's like I don't want to say, people often use that, but we're the light behind the film, the projector.
Which brings up what you saw when you were in the heavenly realm. You said that being that pulled you aside was you. I assume your higher self. And that's a hard concept for a lot of people that are listening right now to understand.
Yeah. It is hard because we've been programmed. We believe that we're the roles we're playing. We're not the roles we're playing. We're playing the role. We're experiencing all that it has to offer. And we go into forgetting within our role so we can have the experience, but come up for air often, because this is not who we are. I am not my role, But the more I buy into that this is who I am, then I can be tied into losing that. If you take this role away from me, then I can be afraid. If I believe that that's all I am, I know who I am. You can't take away. If you take away the role, that's just. But I know who I am. I am delight. I am peace. I am joy. I am that aspect of God that has never been born and will never die. I am the eternal one. And so are you. There is only one. We're looking into a mirror. We're seeing ourselves. If you see any worth of what I've said today, anything that has helped you remember, it's only because you're remembering that aspect of you. You're looking into a mirror in a sense. And if you see only negativity, you're looking into a mirror too. It has nothing to do with me. Nothing to do with my story. We all have our stories, but the essence of what I am, who we are, who you are, is we are that. We are love. We are the light.
I love that.
Yeah.
You've written a beautiful book called Into Love.
Yeah.
And I know you share more there. If somebody's interested, where can they find that? I'll definitely put a link in the description to get to it, but just tell us a little bit more.
So I did write a book, and people will say, "Oh, you just shared your story to sell the book." Well, let me tell you, you make $1 or $2 on a book. You don't make millions on books.
So
I wrote this book as a service, as an act of love, and that was basically wrote it over 2 years at 2 or 3 in the morning, just writing, and it's stories from my life that I wrote it in such a way that it's an invitation to remember the essence of your own story. And people are giving really good feedback, saying that it felt like I was walking with a friend when I was reading it, a companion. And I remembered things from my own life, and I feel like I've known you forever. It's because this is an invitation to remember your own story. So it's basically a love letter to your soul. And if it just gets to a few, then it gets to the people who, I know, this is interesting. I know absolutely. That's why I don't speak to groups. I'm an introvert by nature. And these talks are new to me. I'm comfortable just being in my own quiet little space. And, I don't need fame nor fortune. Any of it. It doesn't interest me. But I know from my soul that when you touch another, you've touched the whole. That's why, this book, if I even touch one person through this, then I've touched the essence of all that is, never was, never will be. When you look into the eyes of the other and you give you love and you connect that love to love, you're touching the whole. And so, whether it be many numbers that this book sells, it doesn't matter to me. But I wrote it as a service, and for those who read it, and I'm enjoying the feedback. So if you have thoughts and how you experienced it, I would love the feedback and what you have to say. But it's a series of short stories, and it's easy to read. It's written in a very poetic way, in a sense, because much of what I have experienced and try to attempt to talk about, you can't put into words. So poetry, music, those things come closer than anything. Art, those kind of begin to give you a feeling, because really near-death experiences, all this it's an experience. It's not in a word. There's no 7 steps to enlightenment. People want the quick, tell me the steps. There is no. It's an unfolding. It's a lifetime of unfolding and remembering who you truly are. And if anything in the book helps you remember that, then it served the purpose of writing it. So I hope you enjoy it.
People may also want to come to you for your mediumship or your healing. Is your website healingwellness.com? Is that where they would find it?
Yeah, Healing Wellness. Yeah.
I have so enjoyed talking to you, Tammy. You just exude so much love and so much peace. And I'm just enjoying kind of soaking that up as I hear your story. You're not only sharing such great information and wisdom, but you also, I think, you give a comfort to those of us that are sitting here listening to you. You've got a beautiful voice.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. And to all those who've listened to this, thank you for listening.
Is there one thing you want to leave my audience with? Like if all the things we talked about, is there something that you hope they take away today?
Live a life of fearlessness. Don't be afraid. Be authentically aligned with who you really are. Allow that to unfold gently, naturally. You don't need to try. Allow that love to flow out from the inside out. And truly the kingdom of God is within you. And the key is love.
And you use the word authentic, which is interesting because I was conversing with some people in the comments about how often the word being authentic comes up in near-death experiences.
Yeah, it's an authentic alignment with, it's an integrity, vibrational integrity with who you really are. And each person is different, right? That vibration, just a little different. It's different. It's like a beautiful orchestra of God, and I'm so glad that people are living this, and I love sharing this experience with you. We're all part of the orchestra and making more and more beautiful music. The world is not as terrible as we think, that the media tells us. That would be another thing I would suggest is unplug, get back to nature, sit at a table with family and friends. Super important. And unplug and plug into that authentic essence of who you are and experience that in others.
Thank you so much, Tammy. I really have enjoyed this conversation.
Thank you for having me, Heather. It's been a wonderful, wonderful meeting and connection. Thank you.
Thank you. Isn't Tammy just a delight? She is just such a beautiful and gentle soul. I was so excited to have her on as a guest, and she did not disappoint. I loved every single minute of this conversation with Tammy, and I hope you did as well. I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments about some of the things that we covered. I mean, she shared so much. Not only was her story incredible, her experiences, but she also came back with so much wisdom, which I really appreciated. A few of the things that stood out to me, and you can let me know in the comments if these or something else stood out to you, but I always love hearing about Jesus and what people learn, and so I really appreciated that from her. It was also interesting that when she was talking to this other being, she realized it was her soul. I know that's a hard concept, but I've heard that before, and I'm really starting to kind of grasp it. So I think the more of these near-death experiences you listen to, the more you start to understand that as well. Her grandfather, seeing him shows us that our loved ones live on, that we will see them again. She also said a few controversial things for some of you, like the fact that Hitler eventually will be going to the love. I don't think that means that there aren't consequences to what people do, because I think there are, but I think eventually we all do move in that direction. So I know that's a hard concept for a lot of us, but she's not the first one to have said that. She also talked about suffering and how that is an opportunity for us to choose love. That's also something that I know is hard for some people to understand, but I will just say for myself, it's been the biggest challenges, the hardest things in my life, which have allowed me to grow the most, or maybe allowed me to overcome, which I think is an achievement. And they've also given me the opportunity to gain more compassion. So I feel for myself that suffering has led to positive things, but boy, does it suck when you are in it. I totally get that. But again, I know that's controversial for a lot of people. She also talked about how powerful we were, and we're powerful beyond what we can even imagine. And I loved the idea that she said, be careful who sits at your table. In other words, be careful about what we are putting into us. Be careful of our thoughts. Be careful of what we are looking at on our phone, and just choose wisely the things that we allow into our heart. Don't focus on negative thoughts. Try to get rid of those negative thoughts right away. So that also is something that I appreciated that she said. She talked about the questions that she asked, and I can't wait to ask questions. I mean, I can wait. I don't want it to happen anytime soon, but when I get the opportunity, boy, will I have a lot of questions to ask. As you can tell, I have this show. I like to ask questions, but I'm curious. Jot down in the comments if there are some questions that you would like to ask when you move into this heavenly realm someday. I would love to hear what they are. That would be really interesting to me. So please jot something down in the comments. The comments do mean a lot to me, but I also love connecting with you. If you liked it, please give it a like and share this with a friend if you know someone who may like it. And just double check to make sure you're subscribed. Some people somehow get unsubscribed, so just double check on that. I will have all of her information in the description. So you're going to find there a link to her book. In fact, a link to all of the books I've ever mentioned on my show. And then you'll also find a link to her website, something that I plan to check out. I'd love to learn more about some of the things that she does. You can also find in the description a link to all my past episodes. You can also just type in Beyond with Heather Tesch, and that'll probably bring some up as well. But all of my past ones, there's a link to that. And then I'll have a link there for any of you that are interested in memberships. It's just another way to support me. And a big thank you to all of you that are supporting me through memberships, whether you're a supporter or a super supporter. I really do appreciate that. And of course, I appreciate all of you just for being here week after week. You can also find out more about picking up some merchandise. Never any obligation for any of this, but just letting you know that it's there if you want to support me in another way. I'm just so grateful that you are here, that you come looking for me each week, and please do come looking for me. YouTube is going to probably send you out things which are the latest things that you looked at, so it might not be me. So if YouTube isn't sending me out, please come looking every week. I have a new one, and I am so excited about the guests I have this month and next month. I feel like I'm just these guests are just hitting it out of the ballpark. They really are some incredible people, and I'm so excited just to have them on here, to be able to ask them questions and to be able to share that with you. Thank you, everybody, for being here today. I am so grateful for all of you. I really appreciate you coming back week after week. You have a wonderful week, and I hope to see you in the next episode. Thanks for joining me on Beyond with Heather Tesch. Please add comments and questions you'd like future guests to answer. Also, if you liked what you heard, please hit the thumbs up button and subscribe. That'll help keep this podcast going. You can also go to Beyond with Heather Tesch to look for more episodes.